everyone, Emily here with Classic Lit with Emily. Today I have a big, mega, ultimate goal bucket reading list video to talk about with you. My own project, including some absolutely fabulous and essential mega reading list books for reference, and I'm going to show you a lot of other lists you can resort to. And in the process of making my own list, first, if you haven't seen my Christmas classics analysis review and recommendations video I did maybe a little less than a week ago. Check that out. I'll link it below in the drop-down menu. I show you some absolutely beautiful Christmas classics, beautiful versions. Some you may or may not have heard of. I talk about what they're about, why you should read them, why they're essential, a little bit about the back history, and I provide you some links where you can go find those books for yourself or to gift to others at Christmas. So check that out. But today, and by the way, welcome. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, hit the bell. And if you're not, thank you so much for coming back. I review classic literature and great works, talk about analysis and themes and motifs and literary devices and everything you need to know about really studying great, great books. I am a college English instructor, and this is where I can share my passion with you. So today I'm going to show you we're going to talk about the 1,000 books you should read before you die. We're going to talk about the 1,000 books you should read before you die. Um, what's in these books, who wrote them, why they're qualified to write them, how you should pick from them, how you should use them, and then I'm going to show you some alternative lists in detail. And in my own project goal is to come up with a list of 2,000 books that I plan to read before I die. Now, this is a monumental task because I am 51 years old. I wish I had started this sooner. Having done my master's in English and an undergrad in English literature, I've read quite a lot of the books you might find on some of these lists, and I can include some of those. But I'm really coming up with a list of 2,000 books I want to read. Hence, from now until, assuming I can live to at least 80, I'm giving myself 28 years. So it's like read or die trying kind of a scenario. And some of them might be rereads of books I have read, but I mean, that was when I was in my 20s, even going into my 40s when I did my second master's. So reading some of these books, and so some and then you're trying to cram them in to get them done for your college class, and so it's like I didn't really study them slowly enough, and I need to go back and do some rereads. So let's talk about the two books. I'm going to show you on my overhead camera what they look like on the inside after I'm done talking about them. Then I'm going to show you some screen recordings of some things you can find online. So let's talk about Peter Boxall's 1001 Books You Must Read Before You Die. It is a mega chunker. Like I said, I will be showing it to you. Let's talk about this one first, and we're going to compare the two books. Now, first of all, this one is older. It's written in 2006, is the last version. Can you see it? Is it upside down? I don't know. It's the last version. We're going to talk about how this compares to the other reading list. And this book was written by Peter Boxall, what qualifies him to write it. So this book here, the 1001 Books to Read Before You Die, is really for sort of discerning bibliophiles who want to focus entirely on fiction, greatest fiction classics and monumental books and greatest books. Things that are memorable and pieces of world literature that changed history. The books in this guide were handpicked by a group of international critics. Some specialists, some world experts on James Joyce, Cedric Watts, I believe, was the renowned authority on Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness. There's a Virginia Woolf expert in there. There's an African American poet in there, and like at least 20 others highly qualified to curate this list along with Peter Boxall. Now, Peter Boxall is qualified to write this book and work and curate these selections because he has an extensive academic background, and a prominent library. Focus in his career. He's a literary scholar. He is a respected authority in British literature. He's not just an author himself, but he works with renowned global experts. He has an academic position. He's a Goldsmith professor of English literature at the University of Oxford. He's been a professor of English for over 30 years. He has specialized expertise from the 20th and the 21st century fiction, drama categories. He's published some other works, the 21st Century Guide of Critical Literature, something to that effect. There's one called The Value of Today's Novel or something like that. He's worked with editorial teams, as well, and publishing houses, and so this is a really good collaborative curation of greatest fiction. Uh, um, and so I'll show you the inside and we'll talk about how it's completely different than the other one. The biggest difference here is there's been a lot of books written since 2006, so keep that in mind, 2006, 2007. So let's move though to talk about James Mustich's. This one's a little more popular. I'm not sure I pronounced his name right. Mustich. I'm calling him Mustich, Mustich. I have no idea. Um, James Mustich's 1000 Books to Read Before You Die is much newer. It's very popular. It doesn't feel quite as chunky. Of course, the book has that matte texture. It's a life-changing list. Now, there's a huge difference in these books, which I'll show you and talk about. Um, but James Mustich isn't so much the academic scholar, right? So James Mustich, well, let's talk about the book. This book really is all about the celebration of reading, but it includes everything, not just fiction. So we have poetry, we have nonfiction, we have some short essays, we have a lot of history, a lot of autobiography, we have biography. Yes, there's some fiction in there, poetry, there's science fiction, memoir, there's travel writing, some children's books, not a lot. History, so a nice plethora of choices if you want to be very well rounded and read some really, very, very fabulous books if you are open to all of that. Now, this book, James Mustich didn't write this book to be like the ultimate checklist, more of like a catalog, a Christmas catalog of choices you can pick through to find something you may like, all of great books. So more like browsing the universe of greatest books if you need to figure out what to read next, kind of a thing. I don't take it as that. When I have books like this, I want to do the checklist. I pick and choose a few. I might cross out a few and replace some. So we'll get into that later. So it's not a prescriptive list of the greatest works. It's a celebration of the glorious, heritage of writing in general, and like just fabulous books. Now, what qualifies him to write this? Again, he's not really so much of an academic scholar. He has a lot of book worldly experience. He does have a college degree in an undefined area, so it wasn't necessarily literature. From the research that I have done, what I know about him from his other books. He has written a few other reference books on literature. He has experience, decades and decades and decades of experience as a bookseller. He grew up in a household. I think his mom was like a librarian, or so she had some career that involved books. So he grew up surrounded by books. So he has decades of a bookseller. He wrote the book called A Common Reader, which makes a lot of great book recommendations. He has some publishing editorial experience. He did some reviews for Barnes and Noble. He has a great passion for reading. His whole world and love is books. He has a wide range of interests. He's an in-depth researcher. So probably more like a book recommendations from popularity and research more than academic study list of more challenging works and great literature, kind of a thing. So the Mustich book, there's some differences. These are in alphabetical order by author, starting with the A's in every section, and we'll talk about that more, and I'll show you. The Boxall list is not. I believe it's more by it's either time period, or I think it was more by time period, starting with the earliest works to whenever the book ended, which of course is a fault in the book because there's been no modern update. The James Mustich book, I don't think I covered. I believe this last version was 2018, so it's 7 years versus 14 years of the other one. So there's quite a bit of difference. I find that the if you only want fiction, this is a great one. But if you like oddities and other unusual things and a little bit of everything, it's going to be this one. I can tell you that I have picked up the first several books, which I just dropped on the floor from these lists. I've already been reading the very first book on the James Mustich list is Desert Solitaire, Edward Abbey, because it starts with an A. Absolutely amazing. Oh my God. And it is a Edward Abbey was the author of The Monkey Wrench Gang. Another thing is when I'm finished curating my own list, and I'm going to talk about how I'm doing that, I'm going to be reviewing every single book and discussing it with you on here. So, if you're interested in hearing about all the books on this list, definitely subscribe to my channel. So this is more of a travel writing narrative. It's the most stunning writing I have ever seen describing the physical landscapes of the desert, the Red Rocks in Utah. His solitary experiences out there, and it reads almost like a novel. I'm only about 50 pages in, but it's absolutely fabulous. I also picked up from that the first few books on there by J.R. Eckerly, My Dog Tulip, one of the greatest like dog books ever, and it's absolutely just amazing. It's so good. It really is. It's apparently made into a movie. I didn't know. I'm reading Edwin Abbott's Flatland. I picked these books out of the A, which is a kind of a mathematical romance of many dimensions, which is about a fictional story about another science fiction, another world where the living creatures are geometrical shapes, and it's like describing what that land and world is like. It's really weird, really weird. Like that's a whole other video I gotta do. I'm reading also the Oresteia and Agamemnon, which are some Greek tragedy plays as well. And I'm reading, I picked this one up. Oh, this one's gonna be rough for me. I did pick up because this was under the A's, The Education of Henry Adams, which is an autobiography written by Henry Adams, who was the uh it was listed as the #1 nonfiction book of the 20th century on a couple of lists. I've read the first chapter. It is brilliant writing, but it's a little rough. There's a lot of history in there, and it's just not. So we'll see. We'll see how much I read of this one. So that has been enough to get me started. I have a couple from this list that I've also picked up, I haven't arrived yet, that I'm starting. So what I want to talk about is I am making my own list of 2,000 books. I figure if I am 51, if I can, well, I don't know. My mom died at 65. My dad died at 76, although my mom's sister is 83. She's still alive. So I don't know, but my goal was to live till I'm 80. Like I'm going to outlive my parents. And so I figured I got 28. I don't want to say 30 just in case. I'm saying 28 years. If I can read 75 books a year, which is what about 6 books, give or take, a month, depending on how long they are. I can read 2,000 books in about 25, 28 years. I got to go back and play with the math. So I'm curating my own list of 2,000 books to read from not just book for book in these, from several other lists I'm picking from that aren't put into book form. I'm going to show you as well. I'm curating my own. If I were to die in 28 years, I want to read every single one of these books, and I'm pulling from the greatest books list, including these, largely majority from these, and then a couple other lists as well, stuff that isn't covered in these books. And we're going to talk about what is not covered in this book. And one thing that are not covered in these books very well is fantasy literature, children's literature, greatest 21st century classics books since that time. And we also don't see a lot of uh, um, well, I don't want to get too much further into that until I show you my other list. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to jump into my overhead camera now. I'm going to show you what these books look like on the inside. Then we're going to jump in and talk about some of the other lists that I have for you that I'm going to pull from, making my list, and then we will continue. So stay tuned. Here we go. All right, here we are doing my overhead inside look at these 2 books, 1001 Books by Peter Boxall, You Must Read Before You Die, and James Mustich, 1000 Books to Read, a Life-Changing List, Read Before You Die. Let's start with the Boxall one because this is the one that goes through 2018. This is my art background. I record a lot of filming videos for my other channel, so this is my art palette background. That's why I have an overhead camera. Let's take a look inside this book here. And we have a nice introduction talking about the love of books, his love of books, how he grew up with books. These pages are more matte finish, regular paper texture, and the matte cover kind of rough compared to the other one, which is shiny. We have an introduction. and we talk about how he organizes the books, and then we get right into it. And again, it's alphabetical, so A, B, C. And this is where I'm starting in the A's. Here's that book I told you about, Desert Solitaire. It is fabulous. It is a very, very, if you love beautiful descriptive writing that's almost like written in the style of the old literary classics. Very, 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 very good. Very good. I don't even usually like that kind of stuff. So I'm here. I'm reading Desert Solitaire. I told you I picked up Flatland. I have Things Fall Apart. My dog Tulip I picked up. So we have a little blurb on each book with a little picture, which is fabulous. Some of them don't have the pictures. Gonna read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I told you I picked up... my son has that book. I picked up the Henry Adams one. That's going to be a little rougher because it's so much history in it. We have Watership Down. Half a Yellow Sun I picked up. The Orestia, which I picked up. Orestia. This one, like, here's a couple in the A's I'm going to skip. Let Us Now Praise Famous Men. All about some of the men who made the country. A lot of history there. Just don't know I want to spend too much of my time on this. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is a play. It's drama. Was really supposed to be an amazing play. I don't really want to read many plays. We have Little Women, which I will read. Part-Time Indian I'll read. Voices from Chernobyl I probably won't read. It's about the oral history of the nuclear disaster. Just not something in my limited time I want to read. And I am open to new things, which is I am choosing some that are new. So I'm going to read all of these. Lucky Jim, Hans Christian Andersen Fairy Tales. I've read all of those. I might give a few spin on a couple. I have not read Maya Angelou, Arabian Nights. I'm just going to show you the rest of the A section. The Clouds, Aristotle. Study is Hard Work. This is a nonfiction book about how to be a good student. I don't need to read that because I actually teach. The Foundation Trilogy, I'm not going to read, by Isaac Asimov. I'm only going to read one, the first one. Not going to read them all. And I don't think I'll read, I'm going to read all of these actually. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I will read Jane Austen. Now, Austen, we have all the Jane Austen novels. The only one I have read was Emma, and it was for my undergrad in English Lit, because there's just so many great works to study. And I love the Brontes. I just wasn't the biggest fan. So am I going to knock them all out? Probably. We'll see if I have to at least start with a couple and see. Then we get into the B's, and that's, as far as I got. So like the Ideological Origins of the American Revolution. Let's just skip some random pages here. The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare. Here's an astronaut's account to the moon. So see, again, we have nonfiction. We have... This looks interesting. Memoirs of a Medieval Woman. The Complete Sherlock Holmes. The Moving Toy Shop. Love it. The Man in the High Castle. Ooh. I don't know if I can read that because I watched some of the show and I hated it. Probably not. So as I'm going through alphabetically, I'm skipping ones I won't want to read that I just know I won't because I don't want to waste my time on it. And so maybe I'll knock down to like 700, maybe I'll get down to 700 out of this, or 800. So that is kind of it all the way to the end. Very comprehensive. The essays on each book that I've read so far are really interesting. And not just a summary, it talks about why it's a great book, why it was chosen, why it's noteworthy. So, of course, they have Tolkien in there. So let's look at the other one. This one is a lot prettier. It's more fun. It's shiny. It's fatter. It's older, though, and it's a little disappointment why there wasn't an updated version for so long now. So it's arranged differently. So we have the pre-1700s, 1700, 18, 1900s, 2000s. So it's by time period, not alphabetical. Get that shine so you can see the gloss. Contributors. So these are all the people he worked with. If you want to know about and these are all academic people. Professor, PhD, professor from all around the country and all around the world. Here's an index of titles. Pre-1700. Ooh. yeah, so from this book, I haven't figured out what I'm going to pull yet. For my English degree, I had to read a lot of stuff like that. A lot of old stuff, and I don't know that I want to relive some of it. Aesop's Fables, it's pretty short, perhaps. Metamorphosis by Ovid. Of course, we have a lot of more Greek and Roman, but look at these shiny, beautiful pages. A little bit more kind of artistic stuff in this book. So I'm not as big on, like, I don't really enjoy things like the Odyssey and the Iliad. You have the Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Of course, when I did medieval literature class, I had to read that. Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. Brilliant. Difficult to read. Very difficult. So we have a lot of heavy study stuff. And again, remember, this book is all fiction. Moll Flanders is absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. Gulliver's Travels, Clarissa. Some of this I have never heard of. Tom Jones. So I'm going to be going through and picking from them what I want to read. Candide, of course, is on the Eastern Press's 100 Greatest Books You Can Buy, the leather-bound ones, which I have. So some of this, yeah, I'm not as interested in old stuff. Probably my interest is turn of the century around the 1800. But yeah, look at the illustrations in here. Just the artwork, the posters, the covers. Great book. So if I want to skip to apparently where's my index? If I want to skip to 1800, page 80, or even 1900s, 230. 230. Let's go to the 1900s. Yeah, so here we got some favorites. Hound of the Baskervilles, Heart of Darkness, read all that from my English degree. The Wings of the Dove, Henry James, love it. Henry James is, by the way, my absolute favorite author of all time, classic author. I've read almost all of his work. Here he is right here. A lot of Henry James on this list. The Bostonians, one of my favorites. He also wrote The Turn of the Screw. Look at, oh, I love it. So we have some other stuff in here. The Old Wives' Tale. Some things you would never have heard of. The Forsyte Saga, which was made into a show. Have not read. Have seen the show Howard's End. Ethan Frome. So yeah, a lot of famous, like the Barnes & Noble Greatest Classics, or the most famous classic works you'll find in here. D.H. Lawrence, Lady Chatterley's Lover. I'm sure we'll have Anna Karenina in here somewhere. D.H. Lawrence, The Rainbow. Virginia Woolf, of course, Human Bondage, Somerset Maugham. So how much of the, I hate Virginia Woolf. The one class in college that I hated with a passionate hate had all Virginia Woolf in it. I remember her novel, The Awakening, which at the end of the novel implies she swims out to the ocean and drowns or kills herself. I remember going into my professor's office and arguing with him about the ending, and he said he has never heard in all of his days, and he was an old guy, anyone ever deny the ending. And I said, I'm not denying it. Who says that she drowned? She swam out there. She was they didn't say she was going out there to kill herself. She just went for a swim on a beautiful sunny day. She was looking back at the shoreline, thinking about her life, and the book ends. Why do we all think she died? Who says she died? I say she didn't die. I think she swam back and continued on with her party. And like he was looking at me like I was nuts. But yeah, so that was fun times. Okay, Frank Kafka, The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Herman Hesse. So yeah, we have some really great ones. Let's move toward the back. We're getting into, I have not heard of a lot of things in this book. Would I want to read them all? I don't know. I think because that they are recommended. Is that? I think French. Yes, it's Meryl Streep. I knew it. French Lieutenant's Woman was made into a movie with Meryl Streep, and I thought that was her. Have not seen it. The Bonfire of the Vanities. So there's so many things I haven't heard of in here. I don't want to read about the Holocaust. Don't need to be depressed. Hideously Kinky. I'm going to pull some ones I've never heard of out of here. I'm going to make sure that it interests me and that it was noteworthy enough, you know. So if I'm trying to narrow down my list to 2,000, I have 2,000 just between these two books, but I need to pull about a good 3 to maybe 300 to 500 from my other list that I'm about to show you. So I'm trying to keep it around maybe 700 to 800 from each book as I go through them. The Talk of the Town, that made it absolutely great. Old movie. What's the last book on here? Very last book is, oh, on Beauty Zadie Smith. That was on the 21st Century Greatest Classics list, which we'll talk about. All right, let's go ahead. So yeah, completely different reference guides. They are not the same. And you want to see what they look like. If you're a bibliophile, you want to make your own lists, you're going to want to have both reference books. All right, so let's go on to talk about our lists. All right, so you've seen the inside of these books. I will link both of these books below in the drop-down menu where you can grab them on Amazon for sale. Great Christmas gift for yourself or others. There are a couple of online lists where you can find the books in list check format. I'll see if I can link those below as well. However, just keep in mind that's just a list of the books. It doesn't show you the description, the discussion of why this book was chosen, why it's such a good piece of literature, etc. So I'm not sure I'd recommend that, but if you don't have the budget for the books or one of the books, then you have the list online. Now, I entered into this task of what if I wanted to read each of the 1,000 books from each of these, but you have to assume there's going to be a lot of crossovers, not to mention there's a few other lists I want to draw from great books from. So what about crossovers? Like, what a nightmare task. I kind of spent some time trying to figure it out. How many books are in of like Jane Austen's Emma is in each of these? I wasn't going to look up each book one by one and compare it to the other book. That would take me, I could read 10 books in the amount of time that I would have to do this project. So I did some hard research looking for crossover lists. Now my goal is to read a majority of books from these, crossing out ones I just know I won't like or won't be able to get into. Don't want to waste my time on because I have limited time, like too many autobiographies or too much pure on history or too much political stuff. So I might skip some here and there, like I showed you. But I'm going to show you now some crossover lists where you can find online, depending on what your goals are. I'm going to show you a couple of other great lists and where we can find some more books. And then at the end, I'm going to show you a couple other lists where there are 100 greatest books in certain other categories that I want to pull from to put into my final reading list and why it's important. And then we will come back. Let's get into that now. So let's go ahead and take a look at this list challenges, which is an online free list you can use as a checklist that combines supposedly all of Boxall's and Mustich's list. I wanted to know how many books are on this list because they say they also added other books. So you see there's 83 pages. I went to the 83rd page, scrolled down to see how many books were on the list, and it came to, I can't read that print now, it was like 3,300 or something like that. So that implies to me, since we only have 2,001 books between Mustich and Boxall's list, not to mention overlaps, they're pulling over 1,000 books from other lists. And so when going through this list, let's kind of take a look. We see a lot of fascinating things, but we see a lot of nonfiction, a lot of history, a lot of autobiography and biography. James Patterson is not what I consider a great book, even though it's entertaining. We see the 4-Hour Work Week, the 9/11 Commission Report, some really powerful nonfiction self-help books. Let's go to another page, like a random page in the middle, 30-something here. Let's just see what we see. We see Nicholas Sparks, some basic just fiction, just some popular authors. Lisa Foley, the guest list, nothing to write home about. I've read a few of her books, just fun kind of murder mystery stuff. So I'm not seeing here anything that I would trust to use this checklist because we don't know where these lists they are drawing the other books from. Could be the most, Goodreads, most popular favorites, or, we don't know what kind of academic or scholarly places. So let's move on here to see what we can see next. And we are going to take a look at the Guardian's list. But yeah, so I'm not going to use this online list challenge checklist because I also don't know. There's no way to really... I don't know. I don't want my list to be tracked online. I want in a document. So in case the website goes away or they change it. And when I have limited time left in my life, I don't want to be having James Patterson and Danielle Steele and it's just some popular books on there. You know, I want to read great literature and great books, primarily fiction. Maybe some nonfiction if they're really remarkable. So let's move on and look at another list. All right, so here we have the 1,000 novels by the Guardian's list. Only novels, no memoirs, no short stories, no poems, no nonfiction. And it's done in 5 categories. So comedy, love, crime, war, self. Comedy, we have some books, common books, Lucky Jim, Malloy. I saw The Wind in the Willows in here, which is odd to think of in comedy. Bridget Jones' Diary. We have Mr. Blanning's Build His Dream House, great movie with Cary Grant. I didn't know that it was a book until I just saw that. Charade, wasn't that also a Cary Grant movie? A lot of comedy. We have here under crime, excuse the ads, I'm doing this on my phone. Crime, we have The Poison Chocolates, that's a fabulous book. The New York Trilogy, Epitaph for a Spy, The Neon Rain. So this is where we're going to have detective fiction, murder mysteries, Ian Fleming books, who are the James Bond series. John Grisham, see, I wouldn't want to read a John Grisham book for the life of me. I've seen the John Grisham movies. To me, that's just popular, like fiction and pop culture. Family and Self, some strange ones. I saw some Somerset Maugham on there. I saw the shipping news. Call It a Slave, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And in Love, we have a lot of Jane Austen and a lot of more classics here. But we have some stuff I've never heard of. Lady Chatterley's Lover, of course, I have heard of. All Souls Day. And then science fiction and fantasy, right? We have Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Handmaid's Tale, The Blind Assassin Foundation. So here's the problem with these lists. How the Guardian made their list based on what these 5 or 6 categories, war, travel, state of the nation, comedy, sci-fi. The list turns me off because I don't like sci-fi that much, and I don't like war novels, and I don't really particularly like comedy. When I pick up a great book from one of the list, the 2 big books I'm showing you, when I pick up a classic novel, whether it's Russian or British or whatever, I don't want to think about the genre. Because if I know, this is a sci-fi, I'll be prejudiced against it. I won't want to read it, probably. Dune is supposedly one of the greatest books ever written, and I don't want to read it because it's sci-fi. But if I didn't really know it was sci-fi, I probably would have read it. So, obviously, The African Queen, we have by C.S. Forrester, absolutely fabulous movie with Katharine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart, by the way. I'm just staring at this list. I don't, this list doesn't interest me. I don't know who chose the books for the Guardian's list. The Guardian is a well-established newspaper, obviously a UK newspaper. It's been around for 100 years. Probably they have an editorial team. So I don't trust the list enough. I see a lot of stuff that's just stuff made into movies and just some popular fiction mixed with classics. And it's just not, I don't want to say I'm a literary snob, but I don't trust the list enough, and I don't want James Patterson novels on my great books list, or Danielle Steele. I keep mentioning her because I've seen that a few times. Stephen King, maybe a couple, but I don't. So this list I'm not really going to go by. I might grab a few titles off of it that use it as a reference just to kind of help solidify a list, maybe snag a few books off of it, that kind of a thing. But I don't want to read books by category. If there's 50 or 100 books on the comedy list, I don't want to feel like I'm reading, pop-ups. I don't want to feel like I'm reading 50 comedy books, because that's just going to be I'm now overwhelmed with comedy. But sometimes when you're reading a comedy novel, right, or a love romance novel, it doesn't feel like it is. You don't know that it is until you're in it. I think comedy, slapstick. I want to read a slapstick book, but supposedly The Wind in the Willows is under comedy, and I've never felt like I've laughed in that when I've read that book. So that's just my little soliloquy there on the Guardian's list. So let's move on now to another reference point. All right, so here we have an overlap list of the Boxall from the Big Blue Book, the 1001 books you should read before you die, and the Guardian's 1000 by category list that I just showed you. And so if you were wanting to read, let's say, the books from the 1000 Guardian list and the Blue Boxall 1001 books, this list would show you all of the books that overlap onto both, which is a little tricky when combining lists, trying to figure out where the overlaps are, because you're going to see a lot of the same books show up on a lot of the same lists. This is another one of those list challenges websites where you can do it yourself. So let's go to the last page. I think, well, there's 12 pages. Let's see how many books are on this list. We have some H.G. Wells, The Graduate. Let's go down. So it looks like we have around 400, what is it, 466 books. So between the 2001 books on the Guardian and the Boxall book list, you could subtract 466 and end up with, what is that, 1,560 books, give or take. So 1,560 books, combining the Guardian's list from the 6 categories and the Boxall book, appear in both lists. Now, again, the problem with this is I have not been able to find a list that shows overlaps adequately and accurately between the Boxall 1001, the blue book, and the big James Mustich's 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die book, including even there's no overlap with the Guardian list, the Boxall list, and the James Mustich list, right, which would be over 3,000 books. But we do have some good titles here that you can see. These are books that appear on both lists. Handmaid's Tale, again, Lucky Jim, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Foundation. So there are some good books in this list that shows you the overlap. So if you wanted to do the Guardian list and the Boxall list, you can go to this list challenge, and if you're making like a spreadsheet, and make sure you don't put on these books twice, or know where the crossover is. Since I don't particularly want to read many of the Guardian's books, or don't really want to go by that list, although there are a few I want to pull on there, this list wouldn't really pertain to me. What I really wanted was a list that will show the overlap books between the Boxall Blue book and the Mustich book. And I swear I found a list, and there was only like 100 and something overlap, which didn't seem right. I'm going to go down and look and see if I can find that. And again, this list might pertain to you if you want to read books from Boxall and the Guardian's list. Okay, so this is interesting. Here I did find a list that supposedly overlaps books between the Boxall Blue book, the 1,000 books, the Mustich 1,000 books, and the Guardian 1,000 books. But this list is beyond confusing and has some flaws. So for example, out of those 3,000 books from those 3 lists, this list shows 160 books that overlap, that are in all 3 lists, Boxall, Mustich, and the Guardian list of fiction, only fiction. Okay, so this is where it gets a little confusing. So there's 160 books of fiction that appear in all 3 lists out of 3,000. Okay, well, what about how there were 460 overlaps between the Guardian 1,000 list and the Mustich 1,000 list? So if you were to go by this list here, and you wanted to read 3,000 books from all 3 lists, and you know that this 160 below of novels appears on all 3 lists, great. But what about the difference between the 460 and the 160 that are just on the books that appear on just 2 lists, the Guardian and the Boxall list? How do we know we're not getting overlaps on those 2? Like if we're trying to make our own spreadsheet and combine them or something to that effect, right? So the other issue, of course, is this is fiction only. Well, we know that Mustich, James Mustich, and the Guardian has nonfiction. We saw that clearly in those lists. Self-help books, biographies, autobiographies, history. So we don't know what the overlap. Now, is that what makes the difference in the overlap between the 466 that overlapped the Boxall and the Guardian list versus only 160 fiction that overlaps all 3? Is the difference, the 200, almost 300, is that all nonfiction? Is that what the overlap is on the other 2? I don't know, because this list is showing you novels that appear on all 3. It's not necessarily showing you novels that just appear in these 2 or those 2. So I don't know that this is a list I would use either. This is another one of those list challenges, free list on that same website. Some good titles on here, great titles. Looking through it, Age of Innocence, 1984. I saw some Charles Dickens, some Jane Austen on there. I just don't know if you wanted to read all 3,000 books on all three lists. When you're making your own spreadsheet, for example, that you'll have 160 overlap of novels. But this, my brain becomes in pain when I think about, well, what about the novels that are only in 2 but not 3? Will I still have overlap on 2 novels on 2 of them? And then how do you figure in the nonfiction? So I don't know, again, that this is a list I would use. This is just another reference point for you. And I really don't know that I'm that interested in reading the Guardian's list in the first place. So because of the different categories. So let's move on. I have one more reference point, I think. So here we have a really important list. This is the New York Times 100 Best Books of the 21st Century. Majority of these books will not be in the other reference books because so many of them are up to modern, later 2000s. And there are books, I've seen a couple on here that might be earlier 2000s, like up until 2008. Or maybe a couple up to 2018 on Mushner's list that are on here, but majority of them are not. And there's some fabulous books on here. The New York Times put this out. There is some nonfiction on here. So I have a good 24 books I've pulled so far from this list that I've purchased. I've already started reading that I'm adding to my mega list. So we have Bringing Up the Bodies. I have that. The Men We Reaped. The Days of Abandonment I just finished. I'm going to do a review of that shortly. Zadie Smith's On Beauty, The Human Stain, supposed to be fabulous. The Sympathizer, Pulitzer Prize winner. A lot of Pulitzer Prize winning books on here. Frederick Douglass. We have The Story of the Lost Child. We have The Hurricane Season. American Marriage, supposed to be brilliant. I purchased that one. Olive Kitteridge, purchased that one. And Tomorrow. The Friend, finished that one. Another animal book. Was amazing and sad at the same time. It was about suicide. Diamond Copperhead, which is an award-winning book. We have The Looming Tower, which is the Al-Qaeda 9/11 book. I do not want to read that one. We have Trust, The Vegetarian I finished, which was very interesting and weird. I will review that as well. Small Things, The Savage Detectives, I have that one. So there are some very important literary works on here, extremely important, because they're not covered on many, many other lists, like The Overstory and Cloud Atlas and Pachinko, which of course was made into a TV series. The Road, Never Let Me Go. That's actually the first book on Boxall's list. Somewhere in there. The first book that I picked from his list. So there are many books you want to pull on here from here. I mean, it's hard, right? Because we don't want to read just greatest books from the 21st century. We don't want to read just the children's greatest novels or just the greatest fantasy novels. I want a lot of the greatest from each that I can get in. And I want to pull from these lists. So there are many books I'll be pulling from here. I'll be reviewing. 3 of them I already have knocked off. I'm going to review here shortly. I'll be putting videos up about them. And so that's the other noteworthy list that I really recommend you bookmarking and finding some great books from. Okay, this is another really important list. This is the BBC's The Great American Read, the top 100 novels that everyone should read. And everybody got to vote on these. It was a big thing. There was a TV show about it a couple years ago. To Kill a Mockingbird ended up being number 1, Outlander number 2, and Harry Potter number 3. Outlander, my favorite TV series of all time. Gone with the Wind, which is, of course, one of the longest novels ever written. Pride and Prejudice, Lord of the Rings, Little Women, Narnia, Charlotte's Web. If you only want to read 100 books, this would be the list that covers a little bit of everything. There's no nonfiction on here. We have Jane Eyre, Anne of Green Gables, Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Oh, amazing book by Betty Smith. Such a good book. I love that book. I only read it a couple years ago. 1984, The Help, Tom Sawyer. And then there were none. Agatha Christie, Wuthering Heights, Atlas Shrugged, have not read. A Lonesome Dove is on the Munich and the Boxall list. Rebecca is on both of those lists. A couple of crossovers you might see here. Catcher in the Rye, Great Expectations. So if you knocked off this list and nothing else, these 100 books, you'll be pulling some books from some different lists as well. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Hunger Games, The Joy Luck Club, brilliant. Frankenstein, Memoirs of a Geisha, Moby Dick, Catch 22, Game of Thrones, War and Peace, Eyes Are Watching God, Jurassic Park I've never read. I've never read The Godfather, so I'm going to add those to my list for sure. The Eye of the World, The Martian, Crime and Punishment. So I'm just kind of scrolling through here. Lovely Bones, The Alchemist, The Hatchet was a children's book, great children's book. Gulliver's Travels. James Patterson has a book on there, and he writes suspense, as you know. And number 100 is Donna Barbara, so I don't know anything about that. Don't know anything about Sister Souja, The Ghost, The Institutionist. We've seen Zadie Smith many times. We've seen Looking for Alaska is supposed to be a beautiful book. I've never read it. So there's a good decent amount of books I'm going to pull from this list, probably at least half. I mean, the ones that are not on this list, on the others, like I'm going to narrow down to the 50 I want. If it's one that's really popular, like, oh, Charles Dickens or Anne of Green Gables, which of course I've read, but it's been a long time. But I'm going to double check my other guys. I assume they're on there, but I'm going to try to pull books off this list that are not on the other lists, like Jurassic Park and Looking for Alaska and a couple of others. But if you only can read 100 books, then I would pull it from the Great American Read, this BBC list. I will try to link all of these lists down below. Okay, so we have here a very important list that has been missing, which is the 100 or more best fantasy books of all time. This list was done by Time magazine. And in looking at the Mustich and Boxall's and Guardian's list, we only have limited fantasy novels. Fantasy is incredibly important, and I absolutely love fantasy. So we have books like Ozma of Oz, Mary Poppins, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, of course, The Mists of Avalon, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter is on here somewhere, which of course is on the Boxall and Mustich list. The Phantom Tollbooth, The James and the Giant Peach, Howl's Moving Castle is on there somewhere, The Last Unicorn, Watership Down, that is on the Mustich list. Princess Bride, also on the list. The Bloody Chamber, a lot of Roald Dahl titles pop up on here. We have Eye of the World. We have the Mistborn series, Ella Enchanted, The Golden Compass, Brown Girl in the Ring. Like I said, Harry Potter. Of course, we're going to have Game of Thrones on here somewhere. We're going to have Song of Achilles, The Night Circus, a lot of popular modern fantasy titles. Some are older fantasy titles. The Changeling, Jade City. So, you know, on this list, this would probably be the best curated fantasy novels of all time list of all the ones that I researched, the one from Time magazine here. And I have to honestly say that yes, some of the really popular fantasy titles popped up on both of the lists, but not that many, not nearly enough. Fantasy is one of the most popular genres of all time to this day in modern literature, and fantasy has its roots in children's literature, which we're going to talk about next. So this is definitely a list to go through and start plucking books from to add to your own list you are curating, beyond the few that might be on the Boxall and the Mustich 1,000 Books to Read lists. Yes, there's some nice selections on there, a few essential ones. However, just not nearly enough. So I'm definitely pulling quite a few titles from this list. Now let's go on to the next. So we're going to talk about a very important list, which is the greatest children's novels ever written, or the greatest children's books. And reading children's literature as an adult is absolutely essential, especially the classics, if you want to be educated, well read, and if you want to experience just pure, true, imaginative delights. The BBC put out this list of the 100 greatest children's books we're going to take a look at. Definitely you're going to want to pluck books off of this list, which I will be doing in mine. Many of these I've already read for my master's in English when I did a master's thesis on classic children's literature. But there are many I haven't, and many I want to reread. So let's look at some of these. For example, we have obviously Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Little Prince, The Hobbit, my absolute favorite, Pippi Longstocking, Charlotte's Web, Winnie the Pooh, Anne of Green Gables, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, The Dark is Rising, Little Women, and we've seen a couple of these, just a few on the Boxall or Mustich list, and also a few of these also on the greatest fantasy books as well, like A Wrinkle in Time and Harry Potter, for example. So there are a few crossovers, not a lot. We have things like Grimm's Fairy Tales, absolutely essential. Any of the E. Nesbit books, The Railway Children or Five Children and It. Mary Poppins, which actually is a novel. Treasure Island, incredibly fabulous. Huckleberry Finn, technically a children's novel. The Wind in the Willows, Rolls of Thunder. A Bear Called Paddington, or any of the Paddington series. Don't know anything about Hitler stealing pink stockings. Don't know anything about that book. Wizard of Oz, of course. Any Roald Dahl books, but some very particular ones are world-renowned, award-winning books. Black Beauty, Miss Diee of Chincoteague, and The Graveyard Book. So another great reference point for choosing your books would be Wikipedia under the greatest lists of children's classic books from a historical timeline. And when studying children's literature, as I did for my master's thesis, when I had to read 100 children's classic novels, this is where I pulled a lot of my books from. The greatest boom in children's literature would be 19th century or 1800s. So let's start looking there. And keep in mind, children's novels during this time read like modern day adult novels, if not more hard than that. So we have books like Secret Garden, the fairy tales again. We had Alice, Adventures in Wonderland, Jules Verne novels. Little Women was considered originally a children's novel. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Huge books were technically considered written for children when they were written. We have Back of the North Wind, which is kind of gothic. Around the World in 80 Days, Jules Verne. The Princess and the Goblin, Black Beauty, Prince and the Pauper, The Adventures of Pinocchio, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, Heidi, Tom Sawyer, The Jungle Books, The Wizard of Oz. We can go in here into the 1900s, 20th century. So we have E. Nesbit, again, King Arthur and His Knights, Call of the Wild, Little Princess White Fang, Anna Green Gables, Peter and Wendy, which is Peter Pan, Pollyanna, Raggedy Ann, The Velveteen Rabbit, just the Boxcar Children's series, absolutely fabulous. Babar, we had, of course, The Hobbit, all technically written for children. We had The Little Prince again, I Capture the Castle, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Eloise series, those were more picture books, but absolutely gorgeous. Wizard of Oz, more Oz books. Let's look here at the 21st century, Artemis Fowl. This is when we start getting into more fantasy for children, because that was kind of the shifting of that genre, became popular through children's books. And then we can go back to the early ones. You even want to grab a few of those for your list. So looking in the 1700s, colonial era. So we have The Pretty Little Pocket, John Newbery. That's where the Newbery Award for children's books stems from John Newbery. I think we read some of this list. But anyway, so yeah, we have plenty of selections here on your Wikipedia classic children's list. And I wanted to really emphasize the importance of pulling classic children's novels because of the fact that I don't want to say that our children's quote literature of today, I'm just going to call them children's books because I don't think we can qualify most of it as literature, are dumbed down. I think because the attention span of kids has altered greatly with technology, the use of technology and video games and TV and tablets, and kids back in the 1700s and 1800s and even early 1900s didn't have all of that. They had to learn and go to school, work their butts off, probably for their home, their farm, wherever. And they had entertainment, maybe reading, storytelling. And so the novels that were written for children in the 1800s, particularly early 1900s, Victorian era, even today, our kids today would probably not be able to do it. I mean, can you imagine sticking Moby Dick in front of a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old? It's just not going to happen. So absolutely pure, beautiful delights, gems, true treasures to find in classic children's literature to add to your list. And I will be adding many to mine, including some I've already read. it's been quite a long time, and some I have. So here is another category we haven't seen and we need to consider: the greatest romance novels written. If you want to toss a few romance novels onto your list, I'm really picky about romance novels. You get a lot of romance technically in some of the classics. I'll show you some examples on here which already might be on your book lists. Some that are not, like Cecilia, for example. So you can grab some unknowns from this list or the next list I show you for romance to add. You'll get, in different genres you can have a Gothic romance, you can have a classic romance, you can have the old-fashioned steamy romance, you can have a contemporary romance. So we have, vampire romance. A Dowry of Blood is my absolute favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time, which is technically a romance and also a Gothic vampire book. But yeah, so we have some good recommendations here from Time Magazine for really well-known, best-loved romance books. 50 to choose from. Grab a few of these. I've read a couple. Let's go into this other list. Now, this is a Readsy list of the 60 best romantic novels that can sweep you off your feet, which I really looked at quite closely. There aren't a lot of, academic references for romance novels, so I've had to kind of really pick some of the best lists. But we have some classics on here. Obviously, Jane Austen. Love in the Time of Cholera, that's a great option. North and South, Elizabeth Gaskell. And these are classics that are also considered romance, like some of the Jane Austen novels you wouldn't have thought of. You can grab E.M. Forster, The Princess Bride, which is fantasy, which is also romance. So you might see some of these books on the other curated book lists or the books I've shown you. Gone with the Wind is a romance, of course. The Thornbirds, fabulous novel. The Notebook, great movie. You don't know about the novel. Poldark, great TV series. Outlander, one of the greatest romances ever. My favorite. Call Me by Your Name. We get down this list here to some more contemporary ones as well that are very, very popular. The ones by Colleen, what's her name? Colleen, Emily, there it is. It Ends With Us. She did a whole series, Colleen Hoover. So these are the best-selling romance, contemporary romance they've added to this list that have had the most positive reviews and the most sales. And they've also been part of the Book of the Month Club, if you're a part of that club. I'm not the biggest fan of contemporary romance. The problem I have with contemporary or newer romance is I'm very, very picky. They're pumped out quickly. They tend to have too much dialogue, and I get bored with dialogue. I need beautiful descriptive writing. I need action. I need sets. And I don't just want to hear endless banter conversations between a male and female who don't like each other, who end up loving each other. And I don't need to read super long sex scenes either. I mean, when I was younger, okay, maybe, but now I want to just read great books. And so I'm very picky. Before I add any romance books to my list from these two lists or elsewhere that I curate, I will be very sure to read reviews and look at the sales, star ratings, and understand the content, because I don't want to waste an ounce of my time, but you do want to grab a few of these for your list. All right, so this list here is really pretty important. The Telegraph, which is a very noteworthy publication, put out 500 must-read books, but I love how they categorized it. They categorized it by Asian classics, African classics, Russian classics, American classics, and I'm going to kind of show you how they do their list. And there are some finds on here that I have not seen anywhere else. Obviously some, the John Banville's The Sea, and I, Claudicius, What Maisie Knew, Wolf Hall. Some of these we'll have seen in the James Mustich or the Boxall lists, maybe the Guardian lists. Not all. Some are well-known, some are not. So you can kind of scroll and see what the best of each are, and then the rest. Like here we have the European Russian classics, the Decameron, Don Quixote, although that should have been more, I think that's in the wrong category. In Search of Lost Time, Anna Karenina. Then we have the second best of the rest from their list. We get down to American classics, The Call of the Wild, All the Pretty Horses, Moby Dick, and they're not all classics. Some of them are more modern. Some of the ones I've seen on this list, which are really, really good quality books that get rave reviews, and some Pulitzer Prize winners, and some unknown ones like Latin classics. There are a few I didn't know, like Raquela, The Time of the Hero I didn't know anything about. I don't know a lot about the best of the rest on their lists. We have African classics. I love how they separated by continent like that. So if you want to read some African, some Asian, some European, some Russian, you can grab some books from this kind of list.
I think the Luck Club should be on the Asian classics list. And then the non-classics are under the best of the rest. Classics from antiquity, of course, which are some you will have heard of, some maybe not. I do remember seeing the Golden Ass in the Boxall list. The book. I love how they have crime here. So, like The Woman in White, Rebecca, Misery by Stephen King, some detective fiction. You can go down here to thrillers. And I haven't seen a lot of great thriller lists, so that's really cool. The Secret Agent and Carrie, The Bourne Identity. Really good popular books. We have some sci-fi fantasy. I feel like this category is mostly sci-fi from what I've seen. But yeah, the Telegraph, I mean, like, we really need another 500 books, and we have the Boxall and the Mustich list and all the other ones I've showed you. But you can go here if you want to make sure you add to your curated, lifetime reading list. Do you want to grab a couple of African and classics or Asian classics or Latin American classics? The few that you pick here and there, just check each of the other reference books. Like, let's say you're trying to do all the Boxall Blue Book books, most of them. You can check the few you grab from here or elsewhere and see if they're in there. And if not, add them. And remember, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of books written. So it's like, this 1,000 curated reference books I'm showing you is just a snippet. So really, you have to take your time curating your own reading lists. All right, so here we have a very important category, Gothic novels, Gothic literature. I intend to add 70 to 100 to my list. This Goodreads list will give you everything you need. It's curated from the greatest Gothic novels of all time. So we have things like Wuthering Heights, Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Phantom of the Opera, Frankenstein, The Picture of Dorian Gray, The Haunting of Hill House, Shirley Jackson, We Have Always Lived in a Castle. We'll get maybe My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, The Woman in White, The Woman in Black, The 13th Tale. I did a full review of The Woman in Black on my channel recently. The Turn of the Screw, Henry James, The Raven, The Hound of the Baskervilles, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. You can see these are all classics because Gothic literature goes back to the 1700s. We have The Mysteries of Udolpho, a lot of Anne Radcliffe. You might have some horror and vampire fiction in here as well, which is also rooted in the Gothic. Uncle Silas, Ghost Stories, Jamaica Inn, also Daphne du Maurier, and then there were none, Agatha Christie, Melmoth the Wanderer, Christmas Carol. So this Goodreads list has, you have to pick and choose, and a lot of these classics might cross over onto the James Mustich or Boxall list. A lot of them may not, and you may not even know some of them or have heard of some of them, like The Historian, for example. That's actually on the Greatest 21st Century Classics list, which is also a Gothic novel. So please, please, please choose plenty of Gothic novels for your list. Absolutely essential. Brilliant writing, and I love to read it in the autumn and fall, September through November. I love to read Gothic literature.
Okay, everybody, there you have it. I have shown you the best sources to pull your reading lists from. I suggest you make yourself a lifelong curated reading list as well. Put it into an Excel spreadsheet. You can follow each book exactly. You can follow the book but cross out the few you want to skip over. You can make your own list, a combination of these and others. That's what I'm doing, largely drawing from these, but some of the other supplemental ones that I showed you. I wish I had discovered these when I was in my 40s or younger, but I think part of it is getting older. You realize, gosh, like if I only could live 20 or 30 more years, or what I want to read. And even when I'm curating my list, I'm putting them down kind of in that order in case I kick the bucket, like in the middle of my list, which would suck. But so I have not finished my list. It is a monumental project. I have an Excel sheet going that I will show you. I'll come back in another video when I finish my list. It might be a few weeks. In the meantime, you can get started on yours, and I will be reviewing all of the books that I read, the classics from these lists, talk about them. You'll know if they're worthy, not worthy, what I liked, what I didn't like. You can use them for your school essays if you're a student, whatever you want. So thank you so much. I hope you guys found this interesting, and it won't be very long before I get some videos up of those ones I'm reading now. I can finish in about the next 10 days to 2 weeks. So I will have quite a few reviews of the first batch of these books coming up for you, and I will tell you what I think and if they're worthy of being on the list and which list they are on. But I really suggest you pull books from the fantasy list, the Great American Read list, you know, Telegraph list, these books. If you're older, much older than I, and you only think you can read 1,000, just grab one of these two. If you only want fiction, grab the Boxall book. If you want a little bit of everything, grab the James Mustich book. Um, Definitely put them on your list for Christmas, whatever. But we are getting into that time where life goes by so fast. There's so much crummy stuff in the world going on. We just need to focus on what we want to accomplish in the time we have left, be that what it may. Thanks everybody for watching, and please subscribe, hit the bell, let me know what you think, which book you like or why, and I will see you in another video.